Okay, so hi all. It is a great pleasure to introduce Professor Ilana Ritov to our DEB seminar. Ilana is a professor of psychology at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Her work has made major contributions to judgment and decision making, especially on topics such as omission bias, regret, protected values, fairness, identifiable victim, and much, much more. Her research included highly influential collaborations and has appeared in the very top journals such as PNAS, Management Science, Psych Review, Psych Science, and again, much, much more. She also served as the president of the European Association for Decision Making is an elected fellow of the Association of Psychological Science.
Yes, yeah.
We will proceed as follows, as always. You will now have about 45 to 50 minutes for your presentation, and then we will have about 10 to 15 minutes for questions, and then we will have the formal part will be over, and we will have an informal part for about additional 10 or 15 more minutes. And now, Ilana, the floor is completely yours, and thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. It's quite close. I didn't have to travel very far. I thank you for the really nice introduction. Actually, it reminded me of different things I did in the past, and I have to point out that I've moved away from that, and I think I'm moved more towards social psychology, but I'm not sure how to define it. Anyway, so I'm going to talk about, wait, I have to clear the thing that, no, I can either see you or, just a second, okay?
Take your time. The clock is running, so no pressure.
It's fine. My talk is not that long. No, I'm not sure how to make.
You have to click on the top of your screen. You have to have this
That's okay. I'm getting there. I'm
button
getting
near
there.
the AI that shows you how you want to see it, side by side or
Yeah, I
standard.
want to see it side by side so that you don't.
So near the AI button, which is something like, I don't know, stars or something like that, not sure how to describe it, you should have this button.
I worked it out just a couple of weeks ago when I presented the talk to the European Forum, but I don't remember. Okay, I'll proceed like this. Oh, maybe.
Lana, in the Zooms, you have next to the recording sign. Is it okay now?
Yeah, it's fine. Okay. So I'm going to talk about something that I've been working on the last few years about willful social information avoidance. So, of course, we all know that the world provides far more information than we can probably attend to. And as a result, we inevitably ignore some information that may be relevant. And if this occurs mainly because of limited cognitive capacity, the specific pieces of information we seek versus those that ignore should be largely random. But we know that it's not. From much research, I think starting with Dana's seminal paper, we know that avoiding information is not wholly random. People often intentionally avoid information. Information avoidance has been studied in different areas and as it pertains to different things, but I'm more interested in what happens in the social domain. So in the social domain, avoiding certain information can provide more licensing for self-interested choice, allowing a decision maker to maintain her self-image as a moral person while behaving selfishly. So behavioral choices, why would anyone want that? Because behavioral choices affect one's self-image. So the effect of one's behavioral choices on one's moral self-image, I want to point out, depends not only on the behavior itself, but also on the decision maker's attitudes and beliefs. So a behavioral choice that is compatible with one's belief is not likely to challenge one's moral self-image, then is more like, a behavioral choice that is compatible with one's belief is less likely to challenge one's moral self-image than an incompatible behavioral choice. So to illustrate, a decision maker who feels entitled to her own good fortune and who believes that the less fortunate others are responsible for their own predicament may not feel compelled to help the less fortunate. Learning about those others is not likely to harm her self-image, regardless of whether she chooses to help them or not. Thus, she has no reason to avoid learning the circumstances leading to the other's predicament. So this should increase information seeking as opposed to information avoidance. By contrast, a decision maker who believes that good fortune is primarily a result of circumstances beyond one's control may not feel so entitled to her resources and not feel more entitled to those resources than other people who lack them. Learning about such others may compel her to share her resources with them, and not sharing would diminish her self-image as a moral person. So in that case, avoiding the information about those others could help her maintain a positive self-image in spite of selfish behavior. So the hypothesis we started with at least, were the following. First, when offered an opportunity to help a poorer person, selfish decision makers would tend to avoid information pertaining to specifically to the circumstances of the poorer person's deficiency. Decision makers who consider themselves entitled would be less likely to ignore the information. So we're talking about information related to the circumstances of the person and not simply the consequences of one's decision for that person. Okay. So the first study was a vignette study. I'm going to present several studies, not all of them, but some of them. In the vignette, participants read, imagine you received an appeal to help a person in a dire situation. You are not familiar with the organization that sent the appeal or the person, but you have no doubt about authenticity, right? Like many of the appeals we often get. However, what you do not know is how the needy person came to be in this situation. In particular, you don't know if he was responsible for being in this dire situation, or is it simply the result of bad luck? But if you'd like to know, you can, because a link included in the appeal would provide information about the chain of events that led to this person's present circumstances, specifically regarding his responsibility for the situation. Now, the main variable we were interested is, would you take the time to check the information? So are you going to seek the information or are you going to avoid it? We also measured psychological sense of entitlement using a well-established scale that is based on a series of statements that the respondents rates his or her agreement with them, and some examples are for sentences like, it's very straightforward. Great things should come to me, right? So if I feel an entitlement, and we're talking about entitlement as a personal, individual attribute, not entitlement to a specific thing, right? So yeah, if I feel that great things should come to me, I'm probably high on entitlement. The second one is really funny, but it's actually the best item. If I were on the Titanic, I would deserve to go on the first boat. And also, of course, the opposite. I do not necessarily deserve special treatment. Things should go my way. There's several, a list of statements like this, and you can compute a single integrated measure of personal sense of entitlement. Now to the results. I have to move a little bit. Just a second. I'll solve the problem. Okay. So the main variable, would you go to the link or avoid it? We get close to 30% of the respondents who said, I'll avoid it. Okay, I'm not going to do it. Now, how is that related to their generosity, to their willingness to help this person? So what we have here is the percent of people who gave something, and that's the main variable I'm going to look at for generosity. And here we have those who avoided. They said they would avoid the information, those who said they would reveal the information. As you could see, the revealers are more generous. They're more likely to say, I will help the person.
Ilana, can I ask a clarification
Sure.
question? Hi.
Sure.
Did they see the information if they asked to reveal it, or did you ask them this question before they saw any information?
We did it both ways, and it turns out it doesn't matter much, because when they see the information, either the person is responsible or not responsible, it turns out it doesn't significantly affect their willingness to help. It's the very first fact that they want to see it that is predictive of their willingness to help.
Mm-hmm.
Or could it be like the other way around, right? So they want to help, and thus they want to know more about the people that they're helping to.
So I'm not sure what you're saying, that they don't get enough information?
No, they have this, they want to help, and thus they want to know more about the people that they help.
Okay, well, it turns out that it's more the other way around, right?
Okay.
They want to help, well, maybe not. I'm jumping. Okay.
Okay.
So in any case, there's an association, and in all those, I have to say, in all those studies, I can only talk about association and not causation, right? So there is a clear association between willingness to look for the information and willingness to help the person or to contribute. Okay, what about entitlement? Well, if you look at the mean entitlement of people who revealed the information and those who avoided it, okay, you see that the people who revealed had a higher sense of entitlement, which is a little bit surprising, but it replicates. Okay. Okay. If you look at the entitlement by both revealing and donating, we see basically the same picture. What matters really is, as a prediction of entitlement, is whether they revealed or not. And revealing the information had a significant predict significantly the willingness to donate beyond entitlement. Okay, it's the revealing. Okay, so to summarize the main results of this study, considering oneself entitled is associated with increased interest in obtaining the information regarding the recipient. Okay, and willingness to seek information predicts higher willingness to contribute. That actually replicates already Dana's results. So people who want to see the consequences of their decision for the other are more likely to be generous. Study. This study basically replicated the first one, except that we manipulated entitlement instead of measuring it as an individual difference. So to manipulate entitlement, we used again the established method based on Zeitek and Vincent, where it's again very simple and straightforward. People are asked to write 3 reasons why you should demand the best in life, why you deserve more than others, why you should get your way in life, or the opposite, why you should not demand the best of life, why you should not deserve more than others, and why you should not get your way in life. And we saw that this manipulation then we examined whether it was successful by administering the former entitlement scale, and we saw that it does. זאת אומרת. Okay. So the results. First, across the 2 priming conditions, we again got around 30%, a little over 30% of people who said they would avoid the information, and the rest would reveal it. And there was a big difference among the 2 groups in their willingness to donate. So among avoiders, 45% said they would donate. Among revealers, 75%. So there's a big, clear association between the revealing and the donation, and you could say the altruism. Okay. So how did the manipulation of entitlement work? So if we look at the percent of revealers among those participants who underwent the high entitlement manipulation, we see a larger percentage than among those who underwent the low entitlement manipulation. So we see again a clear link between entitlement, this time it's manipulated, not measured, and revealing the information, which goes in the same direction. Okay, so high entitlement among people who tend to reveal the information. Okay, and again, revealing the information had a significant effect on predicting willingness to donate beyond entitlement. Okay, so to summarize the main results of experiment 2, evoking a sense of entitlement increases interest in obtaining the information regarding the recipient or the potential recipient, right? And willingness to seek the information predicts higher willingness to contribute. We get to the next study, which is the most complicated one, because we try to generate an abstract situation in the lab that would sort of mimic what happens in real life. So it's a lab experiment. I mean, lab in the sense, in the modern sense. People did not come to the lab. They logged on to, I think it was Amazon, but I'm not sure if it was Amazon or Prolific. Okay. In the initial stage, participants performed a tedious task, and some received a bonus payment and some did not, ostensibly either due to their performance level or due to pure luck. I'll show you in a minute how this works. So, and in the second stage, participants played a dictator game in which those who received the bonus were randomly matched with participants who supposedly did not receive the bonus. Okay, they actually received the bonus. The other part was more. The partner was not there really. The dictators were either told that their match partners did not receive the bonus. So these are a set of conditions we call the overt conditions, in which they know why the partner did not receive the bonus, or they could find this out in the concealed condition. So our main interest is in the concealed condition, but for comparison, we also ran the conditions where they are presented with the information. Okay, the tedious task was something like this: how many L's, how many signs, and so on, the standard things we often do. And you could see that, you know, a participant cannot really fully assess how well they did, right? And here's a scheme of how the second stage worked. Okay, so there's a first, after the tedious part, they do the study, and then there's a first lottery. And the lottery determines whether their performance is checked or not checked. Okay, if it is checked, then if it was adequate, they receive the, sorry, ran away. It was a crucial point. Yeah. Okay. So if it was adequate, their performance was adequate, they receive the bonus. If it was inadequate, no bonus. What happened if the performance was not checked? Then they go on to a second lottery. The second lottery is just random chance. If they win this chance lottery, they get the bonus. If they don't win, no bonus. So if you're told that your counterpart did not get the bonus, you don't know why. It could have been because the performance was inadequate or because of random chance, right? Okay, so we ask whether dictators were not given up. You're covering the. I really have to get rid of this. And I'm not sure how to do it. Okay, you can read, right? So we ask whether dictators who were given who received the bonus would want to know why their matched partners did not receive the bonus. Would they choose to find this out? Okay, and they could click a key to find this out. So what are the results in the concealed condition? Okay. First, about 19% said they would not, so just didn't click the right key. Okay. And 81% actually revealed it. So a little higher percent of revealers than before, but they're actually engaged in it, so it's not surprising. Okay. So what's the link? What's the association between those who revealed the information and those and their altruism or generosity and their contribution, their willingness to contribute? So again, we find that among revealers, a higher percent of givers, okay, of those who contributed to the counterpart, than among avoiders. So it's a very different situation than the vignettes about the poor beggar, but you see the same effect here. How about entitlement? Do we replicate the same pattern with entitlement? Yes, basically we do. So revealers have on average a higher sense of entitlement than non-revealers. Okay, and and in this case, both entitlement and revealing had a significant effect for predicting the contribution. Okay, so now we look at all conditions, not only the concealed ones, but also the ones where the information was given. And the given information could have been your counterpart did not receive the bonus due to poor performance, or your counterpart did not receive the bonus due to bad luck, or it is unknown. But in the condition where it was overt, there was no possibility to find out. So when you're told it is unknown why he did not receive the bonus, it is unknown and there's no way of finding out. Okay, and if you look at this figure, you could see first, well, the blue bars are the concealed condition, the red bars are the overt condition. What we plot here is the percentage of givers, of people who actually contributed. And what you could see is first that there's not much difference and no significant difference depending on what they find out, right? It doesn't really affect the willingness to contribute if they know that the counterpart did not receive the bonus due to poor performance or to bad luck. And it's basically the same in both the covert and concealed and overt conditioned. Where we see a big difference is when the information is unknown, right? So in the overt condition, it's unknown and you can do nothing about it. In the concealed condition, it's unknown because you chose not to know, okay? And that actually makes a big difference in how willing you are to contribute, okay? So the present or absence, I said this, I think presence or absence of information regarding recipients does not significantly affect contribution. Entitlement in this case, in the overt condition, has negative effect, which is the typical effect that was found in earlier research. Entitled people were found to be more selfish, right? It's the situation where they can look for the information that reverses this. So to summarize the results of this study, willingness to seek information predicts greater willingness to contribute. And the effect of missing relevant information about the affected other depends on its potential availability. Self-interested choice is more prevalent if the information is deliberately ignored than if it is simply missing. Okay. When the information regarding the recipient is concealed, higher sense of entitlement is associated with greater willingness to seek the information. Sorry? Is there a question? Sorry?
I think it's someone by mistake.
Is there a problem?
I think you can go.
Can? Okay. Okay, so across, you have to ask more questions because I seem to be talking too fast. Across the studies, people who consider themselves highly entitled are less likely to avoid information about a needy other relative to the people who do not consider themselves entitled. So that's one clear finding. And another clear finding is that avoiding information about a needy other is associated with lower likelihood of contributing to help this person. Okay, that's first part of this research project. And now I want to talk about another part of the project. Does not involve entitlement, but it involves information regarding the cost to the provider of help. So most studies of deliberate ignorance in the social domain involved avoidance of information regarding the other person, right? What are the consequences of my decision for this person? What are the circumstances that make him needy, and so forth. But there are situations in which someone is called upon to altruistically help a person, and it's not really clear what the exact cost to the helper is. For example, maybe you could come up with more examples. Helping a coworker with a job, sometimes it is difficult to estimate the time or effort needed, right? So you may be in a situation where you consider offering your help, but you're not sure how costly in terms of time and effort it would be for you. Even things like long-term sponsoring of a needy child through a charity organization is sometimes has this feature, because if it's a long-term thing, you don't know how long, how much contribution would be needed. Of course, you can always pull out, but you don't want to do it, right? So when you make the initial decision, you want to know what's involved for you. So assuming the information regarding the cost to the decision maker is unknown, but obtainable, would the decision maker seek or avoid it? And would the motivation for avoidance be similar to the motivation for avoiding information regarding the recipient of help in all those earlier studies? More generally, what is the role of the information target, recipient, or helper in motivated deliberate ignorance? So, choosing to avoid information about the consequences for other may reflect potentially self-serving motives, as I've described before. Okay, but choosing to avoid information about one's own cost may be driven by a prosocial motivation. Self-control, a sort of self-control mechanism designed to avoid the lure of making self-serving choice. Okay, so in a study I will describe, which is one of several, we try to juxtapose these things and look at information avoidance when it concerns the helper and when it concerns the target. Okay, so in this study, we have had participants play a modified dictator game with concealed payoff information. But the concealed information was either the recipient's outcome or the allocator's outcome. This one is between subjects. We then replicated it in a within subject design too. This was manipulated by presenting a matrix in which the recipient's payoff were hidden versus a matrix in which the allocator's payoffs were hidden. And of course, we're interested in information seeking or avoidance, so allocators had the option to reveal the matrix and learn the concealed payoffs before choosing between two options, one more prosocial and one more selfish. And this is how it looks like. So the allocators, player A, has the choice between option A and option B. Actually, I'll start with the other hidden because that's the typical one. So the allocator knows that if he chooses A, he gets 6, and if he chooses B, he gets 4. He doesn't know, or she doesn't know, what each option means for player B, the recipient. Okay, that's the typical arrangement. Okay, now we have a self-hidden condition in which, again, the allocator chooses between option A and option B, but he knows about the options only the outcome for the recipient. Okay, so if he chooses option A, the recipient gets 2. If he chooses option B, the recipient gets 6. And of course, 6 is much better than 2. But the allocator does not know what are his outcomes in each of these cases. Of course, it's not completely open. They're shown the possibilities before they get to choose. Okay, so in the self-ignorant condition, for example, the player B is always better off with option B, where I get 6. and then option A where it gets 2, and that's the same in the two boards, board 1 and board 2. But the allocators, the choosers, is better off if he chooses option A because he gets 6 instead of 4 than the other way around. Okay. Okay. Do you have any questions about the boards?
One question. So before they make before they see the hidden board, do they see the potential board so they know that these are the two possibilities?
Yes, thanks, Simon. Yeah, they see the possibilities before. I should have switched the order of those slides. They see the possibilities and then they get the one with the question marks. Okay. So they know what could happen. They have to search the information to want to see the information if they want to know exactly what they get. Okay, so what happens here? First of all, they're more likely to reveal the information, to want to see the information in the self-hidden conditions than in the other hidden condition. Not a big surprise. I mean, we all are more interested in our own outcome than in somebody else. So that's not surprising. But what is more interesting is how is this related to their prosocial choice? Okay, so in the other hidden, we replicate the pattern that we saw in many earlier studies where the revealers are more prosocial. They choose the more prosocial option than the avoiders. But this flips when you look at the self-hidden conditions. Here we see that the avoiders are much more prosocial than the revealers. Okay, so it looks like avoiding this information is motivated by the wish to not to face the temptation, right? And the temptation, of course, is that I will get 6 instead of 4, but the counterpart will get 2 instead of 6. So it's a big difference. Okay, so to summarize the results of this study, when the missing information pertains to the recipient, ignoring other, avoidance predict more selfish choice as it did in many earlier studies. But when the missing information concerns a participant's own payoff, avoiding it is associated with more frequent prosocial allocations. In this case, avoidance of the information appears to be motivated not just by the wish to preserve one's moral image, as we saw before, but actually maintain one's moral behavior. Okay, so the conclusion. Avoiding information is not wholly random. Okay? It is motivated, but it's also attitude and context dependent, right? And in social contexts, information avoidance can help maintain what one considers moral behavior, or at least one's self-perception as a moral person. And more generally, the determinants of seeking or avoiding information are related to one's attitude regarding the normative role of the missing information. Okay? So if, for example, I feel entitled, I don't think it's normatively required that I help others. Like many choices, the choice to avoid information that affects others is determined not just by one's self-interest, or by emotional reaction, but also by one's attitudes and beliefs. I'll end with some open questions and constraints. Basically, the first one applies to all those studies. Is there a causal link between the information of avoidance and selfish or generous behavior, or can it be accounted for by sorting? So none of these studies actually clearly suggest that there's a causal link. And mostly, I think most of the results, if not all of them, could be explained by sorting, meaning someone who wants to be generous would search for the information in the former case or would avoid the information in the latter case, and so on. And I'm thinking about it, but I don't have good ideas about how to examine causality in this case. The second point is really a lot more general and applies to this whole line of research. The research on information avoidance typically presents avoidance as a deliberate choice. Okay. In reality, disengagement often requires no decision at all, right? Simply looking away is all it takes. So do the experimental findings understate the true scope of deliberate ignorance in everyday life? I think they do, but it's more difficult to show. Thank you. And I'd like to thank my collaborators on different parts of this project, Steve Garcia and Hagit Sabato, and of course, Yosef.
The main collaborator.
The main collaborator, right.
Okay, thank you so much. And now the floor is open for questions.
I can stop sharing, right?
Yes.
It would be better.
Seems like Ido is waving his hand.
Oh.
Yeah, you know, read minds. Yeah, Ido, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's very interesting, the results, but not exactly what I predicted from my evaluation from long distance of what happened in Israel. So I wonder what could be this. Maybe I got something wrong. Like, for example, I was thinking about these people who really like the song Shol Shaol of Shem Yitbarach love me so much, you know, God love me so much. Are these people are going to be more concerned about learning what's the situation with the Palestinian, for example, in Gaza? So my intuition was that the opposite, that these guys don't care, but maybe I'm wrong.
I totally agree with you, and I think once you involve ethnic conflict or maybe any kind of conflict in a situation, it's a lot more complex.
But maybe you know, you kind of talk about it in the end, but maybe it's about explicit versus implicit. So I wonder if you could run experiments, and maybe you already done that, in which you users as experimenter do not know if they saw or not, and then you will get the effect that you know. So the fact that my prediction was wrong is interesting. Of course, your results are interesting. I'm not. I wonder under which situation my intuition is correct, or maybe it's not. Maybe just incorrect. Maybe these people that are very happy to see how bad the situation of Palestinians is because they feel that they deserve it, you know. So
how would you state your intuition in more general terms, like when groups are in conflict, or how would you say that?
No, but maybe not even about group. You know, of course, it could be something about group, but it could also something about explicit versus implicit. That's the fact that you see that the entitled people, you know, after when they feel entitled, and you ask them to see, so they should see. But if you could have in an implicit way, let them avoid it in the experiment, and this could be done. It's not so easy, but it can be done by, for example, they have to decide, and then in the end, you're going to ask them a surprise question to see if they read the instructions. And they get another bonus if they get it right, for example. So you have a long instructions. No, this is a difficult experiment to run. So
it's possible. Yeah, you're right.
Because there's two interpretation of the apparent gap between your results and my intuition about the three. My intuition about life. It could be that my intuition is absolutely wrong. It could be that these people that don't care about the suffering of others, this is just because they check, but they don't care. Or it could be that they implicitly don't look. And one of the biggest problems that we have in Israel now, of course, I'm saying it from Ohio, so I'm not heavily involved, is that the TV, that the news channels do not present information of suffering of others.
Right.
Now I have to admit that even when I am in Ohio, I don't see CNN. So I'm not sure what it says about me, but and some people don't even live in
It says that your TV is not connected, as far as I
think
can
it's a
say.
really important question. So
you see too much NBA.
That's typically more rewarding than looking at the news. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there are more questions than answers, and one of them really involves the deliberate side of it.
I want to pose a question similar to Itov's. Imagine I'm a nurse in a hospital, and there was a bomb, say in Jerusalem, and there are four people injured, and we know that two of them are terrorists and two of them are innocent people.
Okay.
But would I want to know who is who?
What's your task there?
I'm a nurse.
A nurse? It's a good question. I would hope you don't want to know.
If I'm a nice person, would I want to know more than if I'm an evil person?
I don't know. I mean, evil, you mean like fascist and...
Do you know if the nurse is Arab or Jewish?
The nurse would typically be Arab, right?
Or Russian.
Or Russian, yeah. But I think this situation between the Israelis and the Arabs is really a lot more complex. In fact, now that as I've done up until now, I jump from one thing to another. I'm now trying to study a little bit about groups in conflict and how this works. So maybe in a year or two, I will be able to talk about this.
And the main difference is that when you talk about, so when you have these kind of conflicts, you have all kind of assumptions about what is the reason. So it's not like revealing.
Right.
You are not like, you even,
right.
you didn't really believe the media for revealing something.
Yes.
You think that it reveals some things in a very specific ways that are supported by kind of narratives.
Right.
So the questions becomes much, much more complex. I more
Yes,
than agree with
it's a completely different level of complexity.
Yeah,
right.
I think another level of complexity it introduces is what you would term prosocial in that case. So like the Drew says, so people who are very prosocial or prosocial towards in-group, but when it's a group, you can be more, so that could also be.
Yeah, right. So one direction I tried to go in with my student Amy is looking at empathy versus parochial empathy. And there's a clear difference. I mean, actually, quite often there's a negative correlation, right? But people have already shown it. So I'm not sure we'll continue in this direction, but it is established that parochialism and empathy don't go together. So people who are very good towards their own group tend to be less nice towards the other group, the out group. Even if the out group is not in direct conflict with them, which is not the case.
Ilana, I have a question. How do you control for the confounding that people who are more avoid, they are also less engaged in the task and are less sensitive to your instruction, and then they are not reacting to all the small manipulation, while the people who are
I'm not sure we have a good control for this. I mean, we have several control questions while we run the study, but so we could see that it's a good point. We have to think more about how do we separate this, general avoidance, not necessarily of the information, right? That's what you're saying. People, don't care much about.
Especially in all this platform that we have a lot of participants who don't care.
Yeah, that's a real problem. But that should be similar in all conditions, right?
Sure.
So
unless I miss
still,
something, what?
But
Go
still,
ahead.
people who are seeking information, it's also indicator that they are more engaged in the experiment.
More engaged in this experiment. Yeah.
Maybe one solution can be having unrelated information or unhelpful information to the case.
Could be.
Like providing meaningless information.
Yeah, that's one way to do it.
But also in real life, you have people that have no patience and don't want to read and reveal things. So this is, I think, in a way, it's kind of it captures it does capture something that happens also in everyday life.
Yeah.
Although it's in the online platform world.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
And building on Yossi's question, if you are a nurse, will you want to know or don't know, given that you know that other people are watching you? So to summarize, your research raises a lot of interesting questions.
Actually, Yoela has a paper about not wanting to find out because we don't want to seem. Yoela, help me here. We don't want to seem untrusting or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So that could be another reason, but I think in our studies there's also always the thought that the experimenter would look at the data or whatever, but the recipient, the potential recipient, does not know. There's no risk of him finding out.
Right. Okay, I think the time is running out, so our formal part will end here, unless we have one very quick question. And we thank you for this great presentation. And
Thank you.
Sorry, have to go.
Thank you for the
Can
idea.
go now, and we will stay for a few more minutes for the informal part. For the informal part, I will close the recording. So if you had some